Hey guys, welcome back. Besiege early access coverage. This is episode 18. I'm Enigmius, and today we're taking our last stab at the articulated leg setup. We've been working hard at this. This is like episode 4 that we've been working on this idea. We have the elliptical drive setup. We know that we can make that work. It's already working. In fact, to make things easier on myself, instead of rebuilding the entire machine, we're leaving the elliptical drive setup that we had from the last episode, and we're just swapping in the new leg design, leg by leg, block by block. It's actually a really easy design. I was actually working off a screenshot of the original design on one monitor so that I could make sure that I was getting it, every single brace, every single block exactly as it was, because it seemed like it was a very strong design in the last episode when we were testing it with all that weight. So all we had to do was copy it over, make sure we copied it over properly, and then give it a go and see how everything worked out. Now the whole idea behind this is that it's got the suspension that's going to absorb a certain amount of the impact of the legs touching down each time it takes a step, so to speak, so that it's not transferring all of that force into the structure itself and causing problems with things flying apart. At least that's the idea. That's the whole concept, is we wanted something with a bit of a suspension, so that if it did ever work, we would have the opportunity then to consider adding some kind of weaponry or whatever to the chassis so that it became something functional and not just simply an exercise in building things with legs. Whether or not we would actually get that far would be kind of dependent on today's tests to see exactly how things would hold up. Now the key here that I want to point out to you as we're finishing off this third out of 4 legs is that it's a very light structure, especially relative to the weight that we had on the leg in the last episode. Really, all we have on these legs individually is the elliptical drive mechanism. Everything else is connected by braces. There's really not a lot of weight on it. So you stop and think about all the double blocks of wood that we had on the leg previously, just testing it to see if it was strong enough to do the job. And now, in the place of all of those, we've got a motorized cog, 5 or so light ballast blocks with the weight set all the way down to 0.2, the minimum, 6 rails, and all the braces that tie them together. Oh, and 2 swivels. That's each leg has that on it. But compared to what we were doing in the last episode, really not a significant amount of weight. So here you can see we're even setting all the weights down on all the ballast blocks that we've added as part of the legs themselves. Save it, of course, because you never know what might happen. And then start the simulation at very low speed. Again, I've learned my lesson. It's always helpful to start off at a very low speed at the very beginning. So if things start failing, as they're doing already, you can see a little bit easier than if you've got it set at regular speed or even half speed. This is like at barely any speed at all, I guess would be the official speed setting, barely any speed at all. And as soon as the whole thing starts, you can see it settles to the ground, and immediately the ballast blocks are actually clipping into the ground, and then braces start popping off like they were, part of some sort of explosion, which is far from ideal. So we're trying to see from a number of different angles, are there any of these things that are actually surviving? That's kind of one of the things that we need to be checking is this an utter failure all the way around? Or are there some of these legs and the mechanisms that support them that are surviving, that indicate in some way that there's hope for this design? And sadly, it's not really surviving. Everything is just kind of flying apart. Now I'm thinking to myself, what can we do to maybe correct the situation? And one of the things that comes to mind first, before we start addressing the potential glitchiness of braces, is to just reinforce everything just a little bit more and see if that's going to solve it. Maybe it's a case of things are kind of folding in on each other a little bit too easily, and that's what the beginnings of the end happened to be. Didn't really seem to do much for us this time. So out go the braces, right? We've tried it using braces to keep the weight down on the entire structure. A lot of the reading that I've been doing, people on Reddit, people on the Spiderling forums talking about the various different things that are working for them and not working for them, is that braces can be occasionally a little bit glitchy, and you can't really rely on them as part of a key structural element. They should be used in moderation, so to speak. So start replacing the braces with wooden blocks and see how things work out. Now, very early after starting the simulation, we can see the exploding components is immediately far less of an issue. But as we continue to watch, we will find that that's a little bit deceptive. It's just that 1 or 2 seconds just to give you hope before everything starts flying apart again. And in this case, it's the motorized wheels, or the motorized cogs I should say, that are responsible for moving everything are kind of moving on their own. We aren't pressing any buttons right now in order to make this happen. You can see that they're just kind of moving on their own, and things are just going quite wonky. Look at the flex in that wooden base. It's just like it's got like an arch to it, a very, very clear and easy to see arch. So that tells me that there's a tremendous amount of force being applied to the various different points, particularly the corners. But at least with that extra flex in there, things are breaking, but they're not flying apart violently, which seemed to me like an indication that maybe we were on the right track. So continue reinforcing with wood instead of braces and see how that goes. Still feeling very confident that we're not adding nearly as much weight per leg as we had in the last episode, but nevertheless you can see some of the legs survive when we drop it, some of them don't. The base itself is shearing apart, it's just kind of snapping. Things are flying everywhere. Things aren't looking good for our poor little leg design. I wish I could tell you that by the end of the episode everything is going to work the way that we wanted it to, and that it's going to be a happy bounding box machine that will do wonderful mystical things for us, and we'll start adding cannons and guns and nuclear weapons to it in the next episode, but I'm afraid we've exhausted the limits of this design. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm saying that I had an idea in my mind of a leg design that I wanted to try and it didn't work. And then before I gave up on it, I came up with another design and I tried that and it didn't work. And now it's time to move on to something else. So I'm going to let you watch a few more failures, because sometimes failures are the most fun. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint as to what we're going to be working on in the next episode that's entirely silly, but nevertheless more functional than what you're seeing now. So if you want to be notified when I add that next video, the easiest way to do that is always to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media always in the information section below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.